Foursquare's changed my life, and I'll give you 3 scenarios of how it's changed my life. I've done 1,500 check-ins. How many people have done more than 500 check-ins? Wow, that's the hardcore audience there.
1,500 starting when, though?
2007.
Okay, okay.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's good.
I was in on Dodgeball even.
Yeah, did you import your Dodgeball ones into Foursquare?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I did that, so I go back to 2004 with check-ins. So it's like between Dodgeball and Foursquare, we've created this engine that basically knows everything that I've done over the last 6 years. It's 7 years. It's awesome.
It's really fun. But some of the key use cases are serendipity around place. Foursquare is really awesome when you don't know where you are and you don't know what you want to do.
Yep.
You check in. I checked in a Paris hotel. It told me that the best French bakery was right around the corner. I would never have searched Yelp or Google for that, right?
That's been the theory all along. Like even in the Dodgeball days, the thinking was like you can use your check-ins in your current city to predict the things that you would like in other neighborhoods and other cities, or maybe even find ways to represent the stuff that's already familiar to you in a way that's more accessible. And when we launched the Explore tab, it was like our first chance to really test it out, and it works. Like the theory that we've had all along works really great.
Yeah. Serendipity around people. Last Friday, I was in Facebook's data center up in Prineville, Oregon, which is in the middle of nowhere. And we went out to dinner, we checked in, and within 5 minutes, my brother's wife's sister shows up and says, "We just saw you check in." I'm like, I didn't even know that they lived up there, first of all. I thought they lived in Portland. Yeah. But the serendipity of around announcing to the world you're here, and people show up.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are starting to get a taste of that serendipity over, not even serendipity, but like, the point of sharing. When you share things on Twitter, you ask questions, you get answers. And, it's one of the magical things about Twitter. And I think one of the magical things about Foursquare is like, not only the more data you put into the system, like the smarter we get and the more we can recommend things, but, just by putting content out there, you're starting, like you have those serendipitous discoveries. And it's like at airports, it's at new cities, it's in familiar neighborhoods, it's at happy hour drinks, it's, it's at ballparks, it's everywhere, right? And so it's just this idea of, we always thought of it in the early days as like having the Harry Potter's like Marauders map. Like if you have that and you have a map of all these dots moving around, like do things happen? And like they do. Like, and that's a really exciting stuff. And now like as GPS is getting better, as like these phones are starting to be in everyone's pockets and the apps are becoming more mainstream, but just more of those opportunities start appearing.
Yeah. The third thing is it unlocks secrets about the location you're in. I checked in a restaurant in Atlanta. Somebody left a tip saying, try the fried bacon. It's not on the menu. It was a secret, and it was extraordinary. Yeah. And there's secrets all around us. If you go to In-N-Out tonight, there's a secret menu at In-N-Out. If you know how to order animal style, you'll get a hamburger without any bread on it, right?
Yeah. No, that's the thing. It's like it's funny. It's like all the do you guys know Animal Style? You should try it. It's delicious. But that's the thing about tips, right? So like Foursquare isn't reviews like some other sites. It's people just leaving positive things to discover, and it's it's like you're leaving a secret behind for someone else to find. This is the whiskey to try. This is the story you should ask the bartender about. This is the dish that you can't miss at this menu. And it's like when you check in, you get those rewards. Like what's the point of checking in? Like sometimes you check in, it tells you specifically the thing you should order off menu, and that's one of the reasons we see people consistently coming back to Foursquare.
All 3 of these are subtle things. They're hard to explain to normal people. My dad just joined Facebook and Twitter less than a month ago. He doesn't understand the serendipity. He doesn't get why I check in. He's like, what? Why would you do that? Yeah. How do you get normal people, average people who maybe aren't social networking whores like I am, who have well built out social graphs and all that, and understand what a social graph even is? There's a lot of people who don't even know what that means, right?
Well, that was kind of the big aha moment with Foursquare. It's like we tried this with Dodgeball and it worked. Like you can get people checking in, but like if you didn't have 20 friends, like what was the point of checking in the service? And so one of the things, like, okay, if we're going to try to build another check-in engine, you got to give people more reasons to check in. Like you got to make it more of a one-player experience as opposed to like a multiplayer experience. And so that's where the points and badges came from. Like even if you have no friends in the service, there's still a point of checking in. Like you might get a badge, you might get a point. The specials kind of reaffirm that. The tips reaffirm that. It's like and that's a big kind of, like philosophy that we repeat internally at Foursquare, the company. It's like every check-in needs to count for the user, and we want people to feel that like every time they check in, they get something in return. And I think that's the thing that makes it work. Like there's been a lot of people that have tried this, and like it seems like it's not just the points, and it's not just the game mechanics, it's not just the tips, it's not the serendipity. It's like a combination of all those things together. Like every check-in is like pulling the lever on a slot machine, and you never know what you're going to get. And I think that's the thing that makes the product work.
Yeah. By the way, we're watching Twitter for questions from you because we can't see you very well. So I'm watching Twitter. Use the Where20 hashtag if you want to ask a question. I already have gotten a couple of questions. Schneider Mike wants to know about Whirl and the acquisitions. What do you think about what's happened in the last couple of days?
Yeah, well, I think it was interesting when Brady announced, I was just talking about it a minute ago, like you're starting to see consolidation in a space that there's been a lot of players for a while. And we've been predicting this also. And it's been fun to see Foursquare kind of grow up in this, in this little journey. Like we started in this pool of a whole bunch of startups trying to make something happen. And I think we've grown up. Like we've moved out of that pool, and now we're, moving into this pool where we're with, we're competing against Facebook, we're competing against the Googles, and like, what's Twitter going to do with Geo? And it's been an interesting thing for us to see. Not surprised that a lot of other folks are kind of getting in the space and experimenting with these things, but no, it's fun to see.
Yeah. My own guy asked about business models. What should businesses expect to pay for? I think it goes deeper than that, because Foursquare now is a plumbing system between apps. In fact, how my wife's sister found out, my brother's wife's sister found out about it was from Facebook. She didn't even find out about it from Foursquare. It was because it got pushed over to Facebook and she saw it on her feed.
Yep.
And I see Foursquare check-ins on Flickr. Foodspotting, the reason I asked about Foodspotting is my favorite app to take pictures of food and look for food around me. And it pushes into Foursquare as well. Where's the API going, and how do we know you're not Evan Williams and going to turn mean toward developers in 2 or 3 years? Right?
Well, I think that's like the kind of untold story behind Foursquare. Is like everyone's psyched about what we're doing with merchants and the stuff we're building for users, but kind of like under the radar is like this platform that we're building, the plumbing that you're talking about, and just like Facebook Connect changed the way that people think about the social graph. Like you don't have to recreate the thing every time. We're doing the same thing for Places. It's a graph for Places that kind of melds into like what your friends have been doing and to your social graph, and that hasn't existed before. And I think that's one of the things that's making the product so successful, is because it's very easy for other developers like your Foodspotting and your Instagrams to say, hey, we want to add location, we want to add the relationship between people in place. We'll just go and grab pieces from the Foursquare API and use it in our platform, and it's great because it's making the platform stronger. It's making these apps a lot more interesting. The API journey has been interesting. Like Naveen and I we rolled the dice when we started the company, and we said, let's focus on an API instead of focusing on developing these additional clients, because maybe additional clients will come from that, or additional pieces of software will come from that. And it worked out. Like we started getting people. Like the Android app that was developed came from it was an API developer initially. The first round of data visualizations, like the first really interesting things that people were doing with with couponing and with like dating apps and like restaurant recommendations. Those things came from the API, and I feel like that's a way to let developers to experiment building the things that we want to build. We just don't have the time to do it yet. And it's kind of awesome to see the ecosystem emerging. We've got like 10,000 developers already using the API. Is anyone here using it? Right? Yeah, look at that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Every place has a story around it. I grew up in Silicon Valley. I know the sort of story of this neighborhood. I know that Intel's real close by, that there's a great Mexican restaurant a mile away, et cetera. What are you doing to help us tell the story of Places in a different way, especially in the future? We already know how Foursquare lets us tell tips, but how are we going to augment that story?
Well, it's kind of, we think a lot of Foursquare about, people just seeing it as like the check-in, right? But it's really your relationship to this latitude and longitude at this particular time with the people that you're with. And that's a lot of the stuff that we're trying to tease out with the Explore tab and the History tab, right? So people look at, just like you look at Twitter. Twitter is very much like a present tense service. Like it's about, kind of going through and dissecting these tweets in real time and looking at the stuff. And I think people look at Foursquare in the same way. It's like, oh, you're checking in and you're kind of looking at like what the 3-hour window in front of you is. But the real meat of the service is the history of it. It's like you use it 3 times a day over 3 months, and it's like suddenly we know a lot about you, and we can start using that in interesting ways. And everything in the Explore tab is based just off of that. We haven't really looked at the future tense so much, right? It's always been present and past for us, and I think that's a big opportunity for us in the future. Like, how do you tell people where they should be going? And where should they be going a week from now, a month from now when they plan a trip, 3 hours from now when they leave this conference and looking for something to eat? Like, those are all questions that we should be able to help people solve. And if it's not something that we do in the app, it could be something that the API helps people in this room build, so they can build it for their users and their customers.
Do you think you're going to hook up to things like Google Calendar and Plancast? Because those are two places I've told the internet where I'm going to be.
Yeah, we think about, those things have APIs, and we have APIs. And like, you're in this world where, like, the developers in this room are basically building the plumbing that connects different APIs together. And I think those are the cool things that can actually come out of it.
Yeah. Are you watching what Yuri is doing with Ditto?
Ditto, yeah.
Ditto lets you tell a system where you're going to be next.
Yeah, it's like a check-in in the future. It's like, I'm planning on being at this birthday party a week from now. I'm definitely not going to miss it, so just check me in around that time. And we've seen a lot of this stuff. Like, Facebook does it with events and Plancast. There's a bunch of other services there. It's one of these things that we've wanted to do it for a while, but we've been so focused on just the present tense and then making the magic happen of all the stuff that we have from, like, the user history in the past tense, that we just haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah. One of my favorite new apps is called Into Now, which you turn it on and it senses what TV app you're watching and checks you into the TV program. Are you going to make deals with experiences like that, so that you know where I'm checked in, my house or a bar? They know what I'm watching, right?
Yeah.
Are you going to make a deal to make a new kind of experience?
It comes up all the time. And it's like, oh, why can't you check into TV shows or check into a New York Times article, or I'm watching a Netflix movie, check into the movie. And it would be low-hanging fruit for us, and we thought about it back in the early days. But like, we are, as the company has grown up, and we realized, like, we just have this niche, and the niche is about people's relationship to place, like that idea of a latitude and a longitude and a user ID, and like, what is the magic that comes out of that? So I think the opportunity for us is to stay as laser focused as we can on the relationship between people and place, and these other things just end up serving as a distraction.
Yeah.
So we've been very careful to avoid that. It comes up all the time. It's like, there's because it's, we think of Foursquare beyond just the check-in service. If you think of it as just a check-in service, it's like, oh, why? Of course, why wouldn't you do that stuff? But it's not just a check-in service. It's about, like, generating data about people, places, and in the relationship of those things, and then surfacing interesting opportunities nearby.
Russ Hill Media on Twitter asks, why would somebody use Foursquare over Facebook Places? What advantages does Foursquare have?
Well, I think,
or look at the other way. What advantages does Facebook have over you? Because I know there's a couple.
Well, I think the big advantage is the graph, right? I'm finding that my Facebook graph, and I don't know if I'm the only one, like, you guys should please tell me what you think, but it seems to be like everyone that I've ever made eye contact with at this point. And so that's not the community I want to share my every movement with. And I'm finding that my Foursquare graph tends to be, the people that I enjoy hanging out with, the people that, I kind of overlap with in the real world anyway. And I think that's like one of the easy kind of key differences. The other thing is, like, this is all that we do is, build these apps that help people connect with places. And I think Facebook is very, very good at helping people connect in the online world, and that's what people use it for, and that's what people know it for. And I think that we're getting very, very good at helping people connect in the offline world, and helping people connect with things in the offline world, like places and experiences and these tips and everything else. And because that's the only thing that we do, like, that's our destiny to do it very well.
Yeah. How many people are on Color, the new app, the photo app called Color, who have tried it? A handful. Color is a really interesting idea where when I take a picture of you, if you're on Color and I'm on Color, it knows which direction I'm aiming my camera at.
Yep.
It knows I'm taking a picture of you.
Yeah.
And it knows a lot of things.
Okay.
And it builds a social graph based on the fact that we're in the same
Based upon the people that are actually overlapped, right?
Yeah. Where do you think that idea is going to go, especially when it comes to Foursquare? Because Foursquare knows we're all checked in at the same event or same location.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the color stuff, it's kind of like magic in a sense, where it uses the sensors that not a lot of people are using yet. I think Foursquare eventually gets that way. We've decided to focus on the core experiences because we're trying to get as many users as possible. But you kind of see, like, where the stuff ends up going. Like, Foursquare can eventually start taking, looking at the direction that you're walking. Are you walking north? Like, how quickly are you walking? Are you walking with 2 other people? Have you eaten lunch yet? Have you stopped at all, which was like a signal that you've eaten lunch? And we can use all this stuff that's coming in from your phone, this network sensor, to help surface opportunities. Like, oh, you're walking down the street and it looks like you're kind of strolling. Well, maybe you're interested in stopping in this art gallery that your buddy says is fantastic. Or, because it's noon and it looks like you haven't stopped for lunch yet, maybe we'll surface like, hey, there's a hamburger place that your brother's always talking about. So those are the things I think are going to be really interesting for us to do, especially as we start experimenting with, running the location detection in the background. Like Foursquare is so super active right now, and that's one of the things we're working on fixing, is that, in order to use it, you got to think about Foursquare, you got to take the phone out of your pocket, you got to go through the 20 seconds to check in, and like that's a good prototype of how this, of just to get enough people using it, and it's worked. Like we've gotten almost 10 million people on the service. The way that we get from 10 million users to 50 or 100 million users, or you make things that people don't have to actively use as much. It's like Foursquare's in your pocket, it kind of comes alive when it needs to come alive, and it just surfaces interesting opportunities.
Wow. Charles P. Tech asks, explain the significance of placing links to Foursquare check-ins on Twitter. He's never clicked on one. My use of Foursquare into Twitter has become much more nuanced over the years. I do it only once in a while to brag that I'm in a location or I'm interviewing Dennis on stage, et cetera. How do you see people using that, and where do you think Foursquare should use Twitter in the future?
Yeah, well, actually, I really like pushing my check-ins into Twitter. I'm even actually more into Twitter than into Facebook. But like when you push them into Twitter, it's like you see people, you guys might see this too, like in bars and restaurants in New York, like you see people open up their Foursquare app to check in, and then you see people kind of constantly monitoring their Twitter feed. So it's a way, like if I'm broadcasting my location, there might be some people that don't see it in Foursquare, but they'll see it in Twitter, or they'll see it in Facebook. And that's the stuff that encourages a lot of this serendipitous activity to happen. I can't tell you how many times like someone will check in on Foursquare, it will show up in Twitter, and I'm just at work, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh, this place sounds fantastic. Like someone writes like, oh, they have a great roast beef sandwich. And I click on the link, and I say, oh, I want to add this into my Foursquare to-do list, and then that's the thing that helps me rediscover it, a week later or 2 weeks later. And that interaction, like being able to, having something on Twitter jostle your memory about, I really want to do that, and then being able to add that into Foursquare, and then have Foursquare remind you of that, like when you're, geographically close to that place, or when you have a little bit of downtime, like that's a really big opportunity, and it's just a helpful service.
Yeah. You're one of the few systems that has this data where you know everybody in the room who's been to 4 barbecue places or more. What are you going to do with that to join us into some sort of barbecue social graph? Or if we're talking about wine lovers, if the people in the room who've been to 4 Napa wineries know more about wine than the rest of the room. So why aren't we able to join a social graph with them?
Well, I don't know. I think the most interesting opportunity there is like in New York, my most checked in categories are like hamburger places, dive bars, like cocktail bars, and karaoke places. And when I open up the Explore tab in Foursquare when I'm in San Francisco, it ranks the results, and it's like, you like hamburgers? Here's a burger place. You like karaoke places? Here's the karaoke places. Like it knows what I want even before I know that I want it. And like that's a really interesting way to explore new cities, right? It's like, instead of just being at the hotel, like where's the restaurant that everyone else goes? It's like, no, this is where you should go because this is where, this recommendation is based upon the things that you do in your home city. And like no one's really done stuff like that before. Like we've all seen recommendation engines on Amazon and Netflix, but like, I don't think anyone's gotten to the point where we could really do it on check-ins before because there just hasn't been enough check-in data. And now, like in the last year, we saw 500 million check-ins. Like that gives us the ability to make these things that can help steer people towards the things that they'll love.
Yeah. Schneider Mike points out that Foodspotting already does the joining of barbecue people into one social graph.
Yeah, well, they create the graph. Like, I don't know if I need to be connected to the barbecue lovers. I might want to be connected to their experiences. Like, well, what are the top barbecue places in all of Chicago, right? Because I know where people are checking in. And I know, like, okay, people that are experts in barbecue because they've been to 50 places, where are the places that they go to? And like, we can surface some of that. I don't know if I need to be part of a community for that. Like, hey, let's talk about barbecue online. But it's more like finding the connections between those users and not so much introducing those users, but using that data to help me make more educated decisions about, oh, the barbecue lovers in Chicago, this is the place that you go to, and if you're in Chicago for a day, that's the place you should visit.
Yeah. What keeps you running Foursquare? Why not join Evan on a beach somewhere and, or run a new company or something like that?
I don't know. I mean, we've been trying to do this stuff for like 10 years almost. So this goes back, like before Dodgeball was Dodgeball, we were trying to build stuff to make New York City easier to use. Like this is the stuff we were doing at grad school, the stuff we were trying to do at Google. Like these are the problems that we're trying to solve. And like the only reason we get to do it and we have any success is like, we've got 500 million check-ins. We've got 50 people in the office, like people that know about like search rank quality and machine learning. Like we've assembled the team that can build the stuff we've been dreaming about, all this time. And it's our, that's our destiny. It's our destiny to solve these problems and to build stuff that people love. And that's the way we look at it.
One of the parts of companies that most people don't get to see is the operations, is the servers and stuff like that. We just got a tour of Facebook's data center, which is a huge data center.
Yeah.
What's the data center at Foursquare look like, and how is it different than any other data center?
I think it's similar to a lot of other data centers because it's hosted at Amazon's EC2, and so which is great for us.
We got to get you on Rackspace.
I knew you were trying to throw in an ad in there. But no, it's great. I mean, the Amazon's been great because it allows us to scale up in the ways that we need to. Foursquare activity is interesting. Like Saturday nights are crazy, and then Mondays are really slow, right? So you see these huge spikes, and it dips down, and another huge spike, and it dips down. So the EC2 solution is great for that stuff.
Yeah.
So.
One last thing that you want to tell us about what you're doing and where the future is.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. So, by the way, we have an office in New York and an office in San Francisco, and we cannot hire people fast enough. If this is the stuff that you love, if you're an engineer, product person, we want to talk to you. Please, maybe not rush me after, but foursquare.com/jobs, as many people as we can get. Thank you.
Very cool. Thank you, and thanks for all the Twitter questions.
Cool. Hey, thanks a lot. A lot of fun. Good.